Yue is a primary branch of Chinese spoken in South China, particularly the provinces of Guangdong and Guangxi. The name Cantonese is often used for the whole branch, but linguists prefer to reserve that name for the variety of Guangzhou and Hong Kong, which is the prestige dialect. Cantonese and Taishanese are spoken by substantial overseas populations in Southeast Asia, Australia, and Northern America, particularly as a result of waves of mass migrations from Hong Kong. Yue dialects are not mutually intelligible with other varieties of Chinese. They are among the most conservative varieties with regard to the final consonants and tonal categories of Middle Chinese, but have lost several distinctions in the initial and medial consonants that other Chinese varieties have retained. Names. The prototypical use of the name Cantonese in English is for the Guangzhou dialect of Yue, but it is commonly used for Yue as a whole. To avoid confusion, academic texts may call the primary branch of Chinese Yue, following the Mandarin pinyin spelling, and either restrict Cantonese to its common usage as the dialect of Guangzhou, or avoid the term Cantonese altogether and distinguish Yue from Canton, a Guangzhou dialect. In Chinese, people of Hong Kong and Macau, and Cantonese immigrants abroad, usually call the language Guangdong speech of Guangdong. People of Guangdong and Guangxi do not use the term, but rather Yue language. They also use Bahky on its own to refer to the Guangzhou dialect. It is also used in Guangxi to refer to Yue dialects, as for example in an expression like, which means the Bahkwaa of Nanning. History. The area of China south of the Nanling Mountains, known as the Lingyuan, was originally home to peoples known to the Chinese as the 100 Yue. Large-scale Chinese migration to the area began after the Qing conquest of the region in 214 BC. Successive waves followed at times of upheaval in North China, such as the falls of the Han, Tang and Song dynasties. The most popular route was via the Xiang River, which the Qin had connected to the Li River by the Link Canal, and thence into the valley of the Shijiang. A secondary route followed the Gan River and then the Beijiang into eastern Guangdong. Yue speakers were later joined by Hakka speakers following the North River route, and Min speakers arriving by sea. After the fall of Qin, the Lingyuan area was part of the independent state of Nanyu for about a century, before being incorporated in the Han Empire. After the Tang dynasty collapsed, much of the Yue area became part of the Southern Han, one of the longest-lived states of the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms, between 917 and 971. The waves of Chinese migration assimilated huge numbers of Aborigines, with the result that today's Yue-speaking population is descended from both groups. The colloquial layers of Yue dialects contain elements influenced by the Thai languages formerly spoken widely in the area and still spoken by people, such as the Zhuang rise of Cantonese. The port city of Guangzhou lies in the Pearl River Delta, with access to the interior via the West River, North River and East River, which converge at the delta. It has been the economic center of the Lingyuan region since Qin times, when it was an important shipbuilding center. By 660, it was the largest port in China, part of a trade network stretching as far as Arabia. During the Southern Song, it also became the cultural center of the region. Like many other Chinese varieties, it developed a distinct literary layer associated with the local tradition of reading the classics. The Guangzhou dialect was used in the popular Yue, Muyu and Nanyin folk song genres, as well as Cantonese opera. There was also a small amount of vernacular literature, written with Chinese characters extended with a number of non-traditional characters for Cantonese words. Guangzhou became the center of rapidly expanding foreign trade after the maritime ban was lifted, with the British East India Company establishing a chamber of commerce in the city in 1715. The ancestors of most of the Chinese population of Hong Kong came from Guangzhou after the territory was ceded to Britain in 1842. As a result, Hong Kong Cantonese, the most widely spoken language in Hong Kong and Macau, is an offshoot of the Guangzhou dialect. The popularity of Cantonese language media, Cantopop and the cinema of Hong Kong has since led to substantial exposure of Cantonese to China and the rest of Asia. On the mainland, the national policy is to promote Standard Chinese, which is also the medium of instruction in schools. The place of local Cantonese language and culture remains contentious. In 2010, a proposal to switch some programming on Guangzhou television from Cantonese to Mandarin was abandoned following public protests. Dialects. Yue dialects are spoken in the southern provinces of Guangdong and Guangxi, an area long dominated culturally and economically by the city of Guangzhou at the mouth of the Pearl River. The Cantonese dialect, also spoken in Hong Kong and Macau, is the prestige variety of Yue. The influence of Guangzhou has spread westward along the Pearl River system, so that, for example, the speech of the Guangxi city of Wu's Hosum 190 kilometers upstream is much more similar to that of Guangzhou than dialects of coastal districts that are closer but separated from the city by hilly terrain. One of these coastal dialects, Taishanese, is the most common Yue dialect among overseas communities. Yue dialects are not all mutually intelligible. Classification in Yuan Jiahua's dialect manual. Yue dialects were divided into 5 groups. Yueh High, covering the Pearl River Delta and Shi River Valley. Siyi in the coastal prefecture of Jiangmen to the southwest of Guangzhou. Gaolei in southwestern Guangdong. Jinlian in southern Guangxi. Guinan in southwestern Guangxi. In the language atlas of China, some dialects spoken in western Guangxi formerly classified as Yue placed in a separate Pinghua group. The remaining Yue dialects are divided into 7 groups. 3 groups are found in the watershed of the Pearl River. Guangfu includes Cantonese proper, spoken in Guangzhou, Hong Kong and Macau, as well as the dialects of surrounding areas in the Pearl River Delta such as Zhongshan, Foshan, Dongguan and Shenzhen, and in southern parts of the inland prefectures of Shaoqing and Qingyuan and in parts of Guangxi such as the city of Wuzhou. Golu dialects are spoken in inland areas of western Guangdong and eastern Guangxi, and include the dialect of Yulin. Yongzhun is spoken mainly in the Yongyuzun Valley in Guangxi, including the provincial capital Nanning. The remaining 4 groups are found in coastal areas. Siyi dialects are spoken in the coastal prefecture of Jiangmen to the southwest of Guangzhou. They include the Taishan dialect, also known as Taishanese, which was ubiquitous in American Chinatowns before the 1970s. Gaoyang dialects are spoken in areas of southwestern Guangdong such as Yangzhang and Lianjiang. Wuhua is spoken mainly in western Guangdong around Huachuan and Huazhou. Jinlian dialects are spoken in the southern Guangxi areas of Beihai, Quanzhou and Fangcheng. Anu Hashimoto has proposed an alternative classification based on a wider sampling of features. Pearl River Delta Northern Sani Zhaoqing, dialects of Foshan and Southeast Zhaoqing, interior, western part of the Pearl River catchment, including the Atlas's Golu and southern Pinghua dialects. Guangfu Core, Cantonese proper, interior, Gaoyang dialects of Maoming and the Yongzhun dialects of Nanning and Gaiping. Southern Zhongshan, including Shiki dialect, Guanlian dialects of the East Delta region as well as the coastal Guangxi dialects classified as Qinlian in the Atlas. Interior, Huazhou, Huachuan, Yulin. Wuyi Liang Yang, Wuyi Shinen, Xinwei, Taishan, Enping and the neighboring Damen district, Kai, Kaiping and Heshan, Liang Yang, Zhangzhang and Yangchun. Cantonese. The Guangzhou dialect of Yueh Hai, usually called Cantonese, is the prestige dialect of Guangdong Province and social standard of Yue. It is the most widely spoken dialect of Yue and is an official language of Hong Kong and of Macau, alongside English and Portuguese respectively. It is the lingua franca of not only Guangdong Province but also of overseas Cantonese immigrants, though in many areas abroad it is numerically second to the Taishanese dialect of Yue. By law, Mandarin Chinese is the standard language of mainland China and Taiwan and is taught nearly universally as a supplement to local languages such as Cantonese and Guangdong. In Guangzhou, many distinctively Yue vocabulary items have been replaced with Cantonese pronunciations of corresponding Putonghua terms. Cantonese is the de facto official language of Hong Kong and Macau, though legally the official language is just Chinese. It is the oral language of instruction in Chinese schools in Hong Kong and Macau, and is used extensively in Cantonese-speaking households. Cantonese language media isolation from the other regions of China, local identity, and the non-Mandarin-speaking Cantonese diaspora in Hong Kong and abroad give the language a unique identity. Colloquial Hong Kong Cantonese often incorporates English words due to historical British influences. Most wuxia films from Canton are filmed originally in Cantonese and then dubbed or subtitled in Mandarin, English, or both. Taishanese. When the Chinese government removed the prohibition on emigration in the mid-19th century, many people from rural areas in the coastal regions of Fujian and Guangdong emigrated to Southeast Asia and North America. Until the late 20th century, the vast majority of Chinese immigrants to North America came from the Siyi to the southwest of Guangzhou. The speech of this region, particularly the Taishan dialect, is thus the most common Yue variety in these areas. It is only partially understood by speakers of Cantonese. Phonology. Yue dialects are among the most conservative of Chinese varieties regarding the final consonants and tonal categories of Middle Chinese, so that the rhymes of Tang poetry are clearer in Yue dialects than elsewhere. However, they have lost several distinctions in the initial and medial consonants that other Chinese varieties have retained. Initials and medials. In addition to aspirated and unaspirated voiceless initials, Middle Chinese had a series of voiced initials, but voicing has been lost in Yue and most other modern Chinese varieties apart from Wu and Old Xiang. In the Guangfu, Siyi and Gaoyang subgroups, these initials have yielded aspirated consonants in the level and rising tones, and unaspirated consonants in the departing and entering tones. These initials are uniformly unaspirated in Golu varieties and uniformly aspirated in Wu. In many Yue dialects, including Cantonese, Middle Chinese, K has become or in most words. In Taishanese, T has also changed to, for example, in the native name of the dialect, Hoi San. In Siyi and Eastern Gaoyang, Middle Chinese B2 has become a voiceless lateral fricative. Most Yue dialects have merged the Middle Chinese retroflex sibilants with the alveolar sibilants, in contrast with Mandarin dialects, which have generally maintained the distinction. For example, the words jiang and zhang are distinguished in Mandarin, but in modern Cantonese they have the same sound, jiang1. Many Mandarin dialects, including that of Beijing, have a third sibilant series, formed through a merger of palatalized alveolar sibilants and velars, but this is a recent innovation, which has not affected Yue and other Chinese varieties. For example, and are all pronounced as jing in Mandarin, but in Cantonese the first pair is pronounced jing, and the second pair ging. The earlier pronunciation is reflected in historical Mandarin romanizations, such as Peking, Kangxi, and Shenzhen. Some Yue speakers, such as many Hong Kong Cantonese speakers born after World War II, merge N with L, but Taishanese and most other Yue dialects preserve the distinction. Younger Cantonese speakers also tend not to distinguish between N and a zero initial, though this distinction is retained in most Yue dialects. Yue dialects retain the initial per meter in words where late Middle Chinese shows a shift to a labiodental consonant, realized in most northern varieties of Chinese as nasals can be independent syllables in Yue words, e.g. Cantonese ngh5 and mh0, although Middle Chinese did not have syllables of this type. In most Yue dialects, the rounded medial with has merged with the following vowel to form a monophthong, except after velar initials. In most analyses, velars followed by with are treated as labiovelars. Most Yue dialects have retained the Middle Chinese palatal medial, but in Cantonese it has also been lost to monophthongization, yielding a variety of vowels, final consonants and tones. Middle Chinese syllables could end with glides j, or with nasals per meter n, or stops p, t, or k. Syllables with vocalic and nasal endings could occur with one of three tonal contours, called level, rising and departing. Syllables with final stops were traditionally treated as a fourth tone category, the entering tone, because the stops were distributed in the same way as the corresponding final nasals. While northern and central varieties have lost some of the Middle Chinese final consonants, they are retained by most southern Chinese varieties, though sometimes affected by sound shifts. They are most faithfully preserved in Yue dialects. Final stops have disappeared entirely in most Mandarin dialects, including the Beijing Base Standard, with the syllables distributed across the other tones. For example, the characters and are all pronounced yi in Mandarin, but they are all different in Yue. Similarly, in Mandarin dialects, the Middle Chinese final per meter has merged with n, but the distinction is maintained in southern varieties of Chinese such as Hakka, Min and Yue. For example, Cantonese has tam and tan versus Mandarin tan, yihm and yihn versus Mandarin yan, tumun tin versus Mandarin tian, and hamin hon versus Mandarin han. Middle Chinese is described in contemporary dictionaries as having four tones, where the fourth category, the entering tone, consists of syllables with final stops. Many modern Chinese varieties contain traces of a split of each of these four tones into two registers, an upper yin register from voiceless initials and a lower yang register from voiced initials. Mandarin dialects retain the register distinction only in the level tone, yielding the first and second tones of the standard language, but have merged several of the other categories. Most Yue dialects have retained all 8 categories, with a further split of the upper entering tone conditioned by vowel length, as also found in neighboring Thai dialects. A few dialects spoken in Guangxi, such as the Bobai dialect, have also split the lower entering tone vocabulary, while most Chinese varieties form compounds consisting of a qualifier followed by a qualified element. Yue dialects use the reverse order. For example, the standard Chinese word for guest is ken, guest person, but the same morphemes are interchanged in Cantonese jianha, k, Taishanese ninha, conteng and zhenhk. This is generally attributed to the influence of Thai languages, in which modifiers normally follow nouns. Gender markers for nouns are also suffixed, as in other southern varieties. Some Yue dialects, including Cantonese, use the same word bingo, meaning which one, for both who and which. Other dialects, including Taishanese, use su for who and words meaning which one for which.